in the CIPLA. Today, I'm going to just talk to you on the key concept in antibiotic therapy. So I'm sure that this topic is going to be quite interesting to all of you, and we shall be able to learn from each other a lot. We shall discuss about the key concept in the antibiotic therapy under these headings. One is this is the default antibiotic prescription. Another is outpatient parenteral antibiotic therapy, that is OPT, switch therapy, and de-escalation. So under these headings, we shall discuss about the key concept in the antibiotic therapy. Let's talk about the deferred antibiotic prescription. What is that? What are the common clinical conditions in which the antibiotic can be deferred? As you know, there are a large number of clinical conditions like the viral infection, cough and cold, sore throat, where antibiotics can be deferred. And how do we address the parental concern when not starting antibiotic? Yes, this is very important because so many parents are very much concerned that, well, doctor has not started antibiotics. So we need to just address on this issue, talk to the parents regarding whether it is essential to start the antibiotic or not, and to take them into confidence by proper communication. What should we monitor for, and when should the parents report to us? This is very important. Once you have kept the patient on the without antibiotic, deferred the antibiotic, and just then what are the conditions when they need to report to the doctors that my patient needs to be addressed immediately? Well, as I said, there are a large number of clinical conditions where antibiotics can be deferred. There are acute respiratory tract infections with fever, cough and cold, mucopurulent nasal discharge, sore throat, atalgia, even watery diarrhea. These are the infections which are viral in nature, and they do not require any antibiotic. In fact, what we require is a thorough history, clinical examination. And as you know that we can make a clinical distinction between the viral infections and the bacterial infections on the basis of certain clinical tips like that a viral infection to start with is a high-grade fever, then there is a history of contact, then there are multiple system involvement, then there are, maybe on day 4 or 5, the patient starts feeling much better. And one of the most important part is that in the interfebrile period, especially in the viral febrile conditions, the child, after being given the paracetamol, responds very well, and child becomes very alert and active. Unlike the bacterial infections, when the fever is quite insidious in onset, it is usually doesn't have the history of the family history of the similar infection in the similar infection. Neither it is usually the infection is localized, and then in between, once you give the paracetamol, the child doesn't become normal. That means interfebrile period, child continues to be sick. So these are the regions you can make a very important distinction between the viral fever and bacterial fever. So largest number of the cases of respiratory tract infections are viral in nature. Most of them can be managed without antibiotics. So we pediatricians need to examine the patient with a thorough history of immunization. And if you do not find anything, the fever without focus, then that definitely on day 1, day 2, or even day 3, we need to give only paracetamol. And at the same time, you need to reassure the parents that most of the conditions do not require antibiotics for symptomatic treatment like paracetamol for fever, normal saline nasal drop for stuffy nose, lot of fluids, rest, and nutritious food. And if it is ORS, if it is diarrhea, then you need to give the ORS, zinc, and continue feeding in diarrhea. That is the treatment. You do not have to give antibiotic unless there are certain special circumstances when you need to give antibiotic in diarrhea. I will not discuss about that. The misuse of antibiotics is associated with the side effects and emergence of resistant bacteria. This is one of the greatest problem emerging global concern. In fact, the emergence of antimicrobial resistance is one of the greatest public health problem. Then warning signs should be explained to the parents. Like if suppose we have asked the parents, given the symptomatic treatment and not antibiotics, and we have just reassured that you just keep on watching the clinical conditions of the child. If the child is doing well, if there is no worsening of the symptoms in next 48 to 78 hours, or if there is no development of any complication, then you need not to be worried. But if there is a worsening of symptoms or there is a complication develops in next 48 to 72 hours, the child needs to visit the doctors urgently. We'll discuss about in 2 cases. That is, this is a 7 years old child with a history of cough and cold. Since last 2 days, the child has low-grade fever, myalgia, and the child is well in the interfebrile period following paracetamol administration. Now, when we do the clinical examination, we find that the throat is congested, vital signs stable, respiratory system sound is normal, clear, bilateral symmetrical, systems normal, insignificant cervical nodes. The nodes are quite normal. So what is this most likely diagnosis? Does this child merit an immediate antibiotic prescription? Do I write an antibiotic prescription for later use in case the child develops tender nodes or high-grade fever? The answer to this is that yes, this child doesn't merit an immediate antibiotic prescription. Rather, we should wait and watch. And as I said, that we'll reassure the parents, we'll send the child, give the paracetamol, nasal normal saline drops, and will write the antibiotics only if the child develops maybe after 48 to 72 hours there is a worsening of the clinical conditions and there is a development of a tender cervical lymph nodes. That is an evidence of bacterial infection, in fact. So we are dealing with the most likely is a viral fever, which is self-limiting. Child doesn't require immediate antibiotic prescription. It's better to wait and watch the clinical course. Now, presence of tender lymph nodes, cervical lymph nodes with a high-grade fever is highly suggestive of bacterial infections like acute tonsillitis or pharyngitis. Here, that is a turning point where you need to start the antibiotic. The age-appropriate antibiotics should be given. And of course, if there are facilities, you need to do the CBC, rapid streptococcal test. If it is available, then throat swab for culture sensitivity to know the microbiological evaluation, and it should be done for supporting clinical diagnosis and the pathogenic organism sensitivity pattern also. We know that amoxicillin is a drug of choice. Alternatively, the cephalosporin like oral cefodoxime or ceftriaxone can be given. Second case we discuss about that this child is 5 years old with a history of cough, running nose and low-grade fever since last 3 days. The child is well interfebrile. Again, following administration of paracetamol, he becomes alert, active. There is a history of otaliasis one day, earache, no past history of ear infection. Has age-appropriate immunization till death. That means he has got all the vaccination for his age. On clinical examination, we find the vital signs stable, respiratory sounds are clear. There is just some erythema of the tympanic membrane, and cervical lymph nodes are insignificant. Now, what is the provisional diagnosis? Does this child need antibiotic immediately, or can we wait? Of course, this provisional diagnosis, we are dealing with a case of acute otitis media. Now it is very important to now at this juncture that whether to start antibiotic or not antibiotic, or not, should wait for the antibiotic. Should I write a prescription of amoxicillin in case a child develops otorrhea or some complications? And should I ask the patient for follow-up in case the child develops some complications, systemic manifestation or otorrhea? The answer is that this is a child of upper respiratory tract infection along with acute otitis media, most likely viral in nature. The large number of cases of acute otitis media is viral in nature, it's not bacterial always. So in order to just reduce the need for antibiotics in such cases, antibiotics should not be immediately started even in cases of uncomplicated otitis media. We can wait and watch the clinical course, keep the child on symptomatic care like pain, anti-inflammatory drugs, and antibiotic because they are self-limiting, and large number of cases of this this kind of mild uncomplicated otitis media, they respond to only NSAID, and that reduces the use of antibiotic load by selective pressure to prevent emergence of antimicrobial resistance. So we are very successful in fact dealing with a number of patients who are even suffering from acute otitis media, but uncomplicated. But when they are complicated with some systemic manifestation, or when there is complicated with otaria, then definitely the antibiotic drug of choice is amoxicillin high dose. It should be started after sending the discharge for culture and sensitivity. So this is very important that we clinician can defer the antibiotic in large number of conditions, provided we give a lot of we take a history properly, we do the physical examination properly, and we do not find any fever without any focus. Definitely, I do the same thing in my private practice, that I don't use antibiotic unless it is very, very urgent or very the child is in a life-threatening condition. Because most of the patients who come to me are usually do suffer from seasonal problem, viral problem. Now, this is a recent review which has questioned the routine use of antibiotic in the management of acute otitis media. A significant number of cases were not very ill-looking, resolved its own without routine use of antibiotic. They were given symptomatic treatment with either paracetamol or ibuprofen. So parents were taken into confidence. This is important, that you have to counsel the patient, you have to communicate the patient that there are certain side effects associated with the use of antibiotic, apart from the cost, that all antibiotics have some side effects. They disturb the bacterial flora fauna. They are responsible for antibiotic-associated diarrhea. They are responsible for emergence of antimicrobial resistance. So in order to minimize the risk of emergence of antimicrobial resistance, we would like to just not to give the antibiotic to your child, rather we shall wait, and at the same time, this should be written in the prescription rather, so that it will be a safety net, and we should wait and explain to the parents that if the child develops any complications like otorrhea or any systemic manifestation, he should immediately report so that antibiotic could be started. So in the current battle against antimicrobial resistance, continuing with this policy, it is recommended that no antibiotic is recommended as initial management of acute otitis media without any complication, as a way of reducing the antibiotic load on children in the community by the selective pressure. So a strong recommendation is that the child should have initially there should be assessment of pain. If the pain is present, the clinician should recommend treatment to reduce the pain. If patient fails to respond, the patient fails to respond to initial management option within 48 to 72 hours, and clinical condition worsen or otorrhea develops, then clinician should begin the antibacterial therapy. This clinical practice guideline provide evidence-based recommendation for the definition and management of AOM in children from 2 months through 12 years of age. Management of pain associated with acute otitis media is identified as an essential aspect of care. An option to observe a select group of children with AOM with a symptomatic therapy for 48 to 72 hours is supported by evidence and potentially lead to decreased use of antibacterial agents. If a decision is made to treat with antibiotics, of course, amoxicillin continues to be the drug of choice, the first drug of choice. So take-home message for the deferred antibiotic therapy or deferred antibiotic prescription is that we must establish diagnosis by proper history and clinical examination. We must exclude complications like otorrhea, systemic complication before starting antibiotics. We should wait. So no antibiotic prescribing and delayed antibiotic prescribing offer patients the reassurance that antibiotics are not needed immediately, explain the warning side, and they should report urgently. This is in a nutshell that yes, we can reduce, we clinician, we practitioner can reduce the use of antibiotics by proper history, proper clinical examination, because you know that the emergence of even the amoxicillin or there are reports of emergence of resistance against the most of the antibiotics, including the last resort antibiotics. So we need to be very careful to use the antibiotics. We need to be very judicious in using the antibiotic. And as far as possible, we should cut down the use of antibiotics in our day-to-day practice. Now, what is OPT or what is OPAT? Outpatient antibiotic therapy. Outpatient antibiotic therapy, in fact, is the outpatient parenteral antibiotic therapy. this is very important. This is nowadays very accepted modality of those patients who are hospitalized. So I will give an example that this is a child who's a 10 years old child with a high grade fever since 1 week, sick, interfebrile period. He looks to continues to be sick since last 3 days. He has got mild cough and abdominal pain, vitals stable, coated tongue, and then he has got liver pain palpable. Provisional diagnosis was made as a typhoid or enteric fever and he started on ceftriaxone after sending blood culture. Child became afebrile, surprisingly only 2 days after therapy. Usually sometimes the ceftriaxone takes longer time for defervescence. Anyway, if a child has become defervescent, I mean afebrile, has started taking feeds, become active and playful. So what needs to be done? Whether we should discharge this child on the on the antibiotics, because hospitalization for a long time is going to be very expensive because child has responded to the antibiotics. So this is an important thing to understand whether outpatient parental therapy is justified or not. In second case, this child again. He's a child, he's a 3 years old child with a high grade fever, breathlessness and cough since last 2 days. No significant past history. The child has got tachypnea, respiratory distress, oxygen saturation is 93 on room air, pallor, and there is a auscultatory sound is definitely affected in the middle zone, and the child is irritable. Right middle lobe consolidation. CBC volume of leukocytosis, you can see is slightly raised, and this child was started on asymptomatic therapy and injection ceftriaxone. So the child now the tachypnea and saturation improved in 2 days. Child was taking orally, fever subsided, and he was well interfebrile. Now you know that as soon as the child improves, most of the family members want to go to home. Because they feel that the hospital expenditure is quite high. So whether it is justified either to complete the therapy, as per the severity of the disease, or we can send this child because child has become stable, clinically stable, afebrile, respiratory rate normal, even in enteric fever he started eating. So whether it is justified to continue the same treatment and in the home. So these are the questions. Can this patient be discharged on IV antibiotics? Does informed consent need to be documented? What is the required patient criteria before starting this opiate, and how long we should continue antibiotic, and what monitoring is required? These are the questions we need to answer. What are the benefits and risks involved in the opiate? How to minimize the complication, ensure safe opiate administration, and are there any criteria for antibiotic selection? Can opiate be undertaken in neonate and children with meningitis? So we'll come to answer one by one. Yes, as you know that if the patients are stable, once they are stable, afebrile, respiratory rate normal, as in case of enteric fever or in cases of pneumonia, they can be discharged on IV antibiotics. So on safer side, it is important that informed consent should be documented after proper communication, just to avoid the medical-legal complication. Required patient criteria for discharge is patient selection regarding proper compliance, address, because non-compliance will lead to the failure or relapse of the fever. Whether child has got a proper infrastructure like running water in the home, continuous electricity, and refrigerator to keep those IV drugs, a responsible caretaker who can ensure the intravenous administration of antibiotics, and a trained skilled nurse to administer IV antibiotics through intravenous. These are the things which we need to be sure before discharging the patient from the hospital. And it is always better that we must be at least 1 day he should be afebrile before being discharged for the outpatient treatment. So the criteria for antibiotic selection is to select most appropriate antibiotic based on microbiology single dose administration. Like ceftriaxone, single dose administration continues to be drug of choice in large number of clinical conditions. Dose and duration of antibiotics should be continued as per the guidelines, and the regular clinical monitoring and lab monitoring is necessary. Now, this regular clinical monitoring and lab monitoring is necessary. That means that if the child has to visit the office, the practitioners at a frequent intervals, just to report whether he is doing well or not. The benefits of this opiate is the cost and the risk is non-compliance, and that leads to the poor clinical outcome or even complication. The benefits are cost saving. So we have to be sure that non-compliance, there must be the people, the infrastructure, proper infrastructure, so that there should be not non-compliance as soon as they reach home. And clinical lab assessment on weekly basis and regular follow-up visit to doctor's office is a must to assess the clinical progress of the disease, to minimize the complication and to clinical outcome. So, friends, this is another way that we can reduce the burden in the hospital. We can reduce the cost of the treatment to the patient, and we can ensure the best of the best care and result. Also, we can achieve the best outcome. So, as I said, substantial saving have been found with this opiate when compared with the in-hospital stay, and patient outcomes appears to be very good, while few prospective trials have been done. Retrospective analysis of opiate program have revealed a high rate of success for diverse collection of infectious disease, provided there is a proper compliance, and success rate for opiate patients compares favorably with those for hospital-based controls. I think another important thing is that prolonged hospitalization is a risk for the nosocomial infection as well. So better the earlier the discharge, better is for the patient and the family. So take a home message for opiate is that let us select the most appropriate antibiotic, preferably with once daily doses in opiate. Trained, skilled nursing staff administering opiate is necessary. Regular clinical and lab monitoring of patient receiving opiate. Outpatient parenteral therapy is now the standard of care for a wide range of infection. An outpatient approach to therapy allows patient to return home more quickly while providing hospital substantial cost saving and preventing the nosocomial infections. Now we come to Swiss therapy. Yes, this is another key concept in the antibiotic therapy. What are the situations when need to do the Swiss therapy? What is Swiss therapy? Switching from intravenous to oral therapies as soon as the patients are clinically stable. This is called Swiss therapy. Many patients, to start with, we give intravenous antibiotic. We don't take a chance after sending the appropriate lab samples, and once the patient becomes stable, then we try to switch over to the oral therapy for better compliance. So Swiss therapy is in fact switching from the intravenous drugs, antibiotic to oral antibiotic as soon as the patients are clinically. Which antibiotic do we switch on discharge? This is the conversion of an IV medication to oral administration within same class, having the same level of potency. For example, switch over from injection to ceftriaxone to tablet cefixime. Switch over from injection pantoprazole to tablet rabeprazole. This is an example of this two blocker. So idea is to select the same level of potency and within the same class for the Swiss therapy, so that the potency of the treatment doesn't go down. What are the advantages of the Swiss therapy? It reduces the length of hospitalization, hospital costs, it reduces the risk of nosocomial infection. What are the criteria should a patient fulfill prior to Swiss therapy? These are the criteria before switching to the Swiss therapy. That is the absence of supportive infection, suppurative infections. The child should have vitals should be normal. He should take orally. There should be return appetite. The vitals should be normal. The respiratory, blood pressure, temperature, everything should be within normal limits. Patient should be affebrile at least for 24 hours before conversion to oral antibiotics. These are usually the antibiotics which are ideal for IV to oral switch, like amoxicillin, quinolone, cephalosporin, macrolide, metroidazole, trimethoprim, sulfamethasone combination, doxycycline. They are available in the intravenous form. Yeah, this linezolid is also available in both the forms. And even in the patient who suppose who is on the vancomycin, you cannot switch over to vancomycin oral. So you can switch over to linezolid also once the patient has become stable, or that the patient, especially the best example is MRSA, community-acquired pneumonia, where you give the antibiotics like vancomycin. When the patient fails to respond to the third generation cephalosporin, and patient responded to the vancomycin. Once the child has become, stable, then after being given for appropriate time of vancomycin and looking at the clinical and radiological features, of course, linezolid can be given. So the switch therapy is possible in all these conditions. What monitoring needs to be done when patients are put on this? Well, we need to have the clinical and lab monitoring must be done on a regular basis, and any worsening of the symptoms require readmission. So you must remember that if the patient has been discharged and switch therapy has been done, then we have to keep on watching the clinical condition. We have to do the lab monitoring if necessary on regular basis, and if there is any worsening of the symptoms that require readmission, reevaluation, or even if the change in the antibiotics. What are the common clinical scenario when this can be implemented? I just said about that common say there are large number of clinical conditions, but community-acquired pneumonia, which is say uncomplicated. The patient is on the ceftriaxone, the patient has responded very well, or patient is MRSA, community-acquired pneumonia. Patient has responded to the vancomycin. They can be switched after the patient has become febrile for 48 to 72 hours, is not breathless, doing well, there is a return of appetite, looking well. These patients can be switched over to the oral antibiotics. So take-home message is that early switching of intravenous to oral antibiotic is possible, and positive outcome has been reported in medical wards. In addition, 2008 meta-analysis found that early switching of intravenous to oral antibiotics is possible in moderate to severe community-acquired pneumonia. In particular, quinolones, especially in adults, can be switched effectively and rapidly from intravenous to oral formulation, where patient can tolerate medication orally. Most physicians believe that patients should be febrile for 24 hours before conversion to oral antibiotics. Now we are coming to the last, this is the last key concept, that is a de-escalation therapy. Well, what is de-escalation therapy here? We know that there are situations when patient is very critical and you do not have time, then you need to give a broad spectrum antibiotic covering the gram-positive, gram-negative bacteria. That means you are giving aminoglycoside or third generation cephalosporin, or even you are thinking of giving the piperacillin or tazobactam, that is also high broad spectrum antibiotic. So in that situation, you have started, because you have to save the life. So you have started the antibiotic and sending the blood samples for the culture and other investigations. But once the patient has become stable, do we have to continue the same antibiotic? Because we have got now the culture report with us. So de-escalation means reduction in the spectrum of administered antibiotic through the discontinuation of antibiotic. Those antibiotics, the broad spectrum antibiotic, or switching to an agent with a narrow spectrum. This is important because if you are giving broad spectrum antibiotic, that means you are giving a larger chances of development of or emergence of antimicrobial resistance to those non-pathogenic bacteria as well. So you need to hit only on the pathogenic bacteria which you have isolated in the culture. So diverse studies have identified the adequacy of initial therapy with a broad spectrum antibiotics covering gram-positive, gram-negative bacteria, including anaerobic bacteria if necessary. How do we implement this de-escalation therapy in ICU patient? Yes, we can implement the de-escalation therapy in ICU by identifying most appropriate antibiotic based upon the blood culture and sensitivity report, and also on the based upon the local epidemiological, local epidemiological experience. This is also important that we do give antibiotic based on the local epidemiological evidence and wait for the blood culture and sensitivity report to come. Do we need to modify the line of treatment? Yes, we need to modify the line of treatment based upon blood culture and sensitivity report. And as soon as report is with us, then we must prefer to use the treatment to reduce the broad spectrum to narrow spectrum. Does it affect the prognosis of the child? Many studies have shown that de-escalation therapy does not affect the clinical outcome. In fact, it prevents emergence of drug resistance, as I said earlier. So take-home message is that de-escalation is possible in most ICU conditions and most life-threatening conditions, and there is a need to identify the most appropriate antibiotics and implement therapy based on culture reports. It is feasible even in case of septic shock. It prevents drug resistance. It does not influence long-term outcome. So the conclusion, my friends, is that the key concept of antibiotic has been especially to just sensitize all of us, to colleagues, that is very important by that rational and use of antibiotics by deferred prescription behavior, deferred antibiotic prescription is very important to minimize the use of the antibiotics and to minimize the emergence of antimicrobial resistance. To shorten hospital stay, to cut down the expenses and operate on, and especially because hospitalization is very expensive and is not without any danger of nosocomial multi-drug resistant infection. And as far as the switching to oral is, of course, for a better compliance, because giving intravenous is also always is a very cumbersome. So it is desirable to switch to the oral regimen. Of course, remembering that we must have the same potency also. And de-escalation, especially the treatment regimen, to save the last resort antibiotic. We have to escalate the treatment. If you have started, suppose morapenem in the beginning, your idea is to just de-escalate once you know the antibiotic sensitivity of the microbial samples. And it is very important that we have to save the large resort antibiotics by giving the narrow spectrum antibiotics and prevent the emergence of antimicrobial resistance, which is a global threat and posing a threat to the mankind. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, please ask me, and I shall be very happy to answer you. And I hope that I have been able to sensitize that, well, the use of antibiotic must be restricted. As far as possible, the hospital stay should be shorter. As far as possible, the switch therapy should be done. And as far as possible, the de-escalation based on the cultural sensitivity must be done. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Just wait for the question.
If the patient responds, even if we have negative suspected infection finding, who is on empirical therapy, what will the duration of antibiotics? If you have negative suspected infection, negative means I'm sure you are talking about that the culture report is negative. The patient, if you have started antibiotics, suppose and the culture report is negative, but it is very important to evaluate clinically. Clinical evaluation is very important. So suppose you have, once you have started the antibiotics, you thought it is a case of pneumonia, or you thought it is a septicemia, and you don't find any blood culture. So blood culture, or sometimes there are times when it is not always positive. The sensitivity is very low. So depending upon the clinical, you have to interpret the clinical conditions very well. see the clinical progress, clinical monitoring. An antibiotic should be given based upon the severity and the age of the child, the severity of the condition, then the organs which are affected. So duration should be based on that. But I would prefer at any time that my patient has become normal, stable. So I would continue the antibiotic 3 to 5 days after defervescence. So at least I don't want to take a chance. So we will continue the antibiotic. We will not stop the antibiotic abruptly, but continue the antibiotic at least for 3 to 5 days after the defervescence. Shakib Ahmed, de-escalation should be done suddenly or gradually after sensitivity report come. So as I already said, Mr. Ahmed, that we must do the de-escalation after once we have the report, sensitivity report, and of course once the patient has responded to the empirical therapy, that once you have started antibiotics in critical conditions in an intensive setup, or you have started antibiotic, what they call a preemptive antibiotic, broad spectrum antibiotic, patient has responded. Patient has responded, of course, then then you get after 3 to 4 days the cultural sensitivity report. Of course, the cultural sensitivity report, based upon the cultural sensitivity report, the antibiotics should be changed. If the patient has not responded, even then it has to be changed. If the patient has responded, then even then it should be changed. But it should be given on the basis of the cultural sensitivity report. Yeah. So this is very important that de-escalation should be done gradually. No, it should be done once we have got the report. Say you are giving 3 to 4 days. After 48 to 72 hours, you have continued this broad spectrum antibiotics. Child has responded, and you initially started, suppose Morapenem, but sensitivity is showing some other antibiotic. There is no need to continue the Morapenem. There is no need to continue the previous antibiotic. There is no need to continue the aminoglycoside covering the gram-negative bacteria. Previously you gave because you are not aware of what antibiotic should be given. You want to just make a coverage of gram-positive, gram-negative bacteria. But based upon the cultural sensitivity report, then we should switch over or de-escalate the antibiotic based upon the report.
Second last.
Amoxicillin for how many days? Poonam Misra. See, it entirely depends upon the clinical conditions. As you know that amoxicillin, especially for if you are talking about otitis media, then 10 days is recommended in the higher dose. There is a controversy regarding doses because IAP guidelines is slightly different from the Western guidelines. Western guidelines says that you need to give them antibiotics amoxicillin very high dose, say 80 milligram per kg body weight for 10 days, 10 to 14 days. So depending upon the clinical condition. Now, if you are talking about the acute tonsillitis, you don't have to give more than 5 to 7 days. So depending upon the clinical conditions, the duration and the dose of the duration of the antibiotics, especially amoxicillin, is decided.
One week fever, kindly.
Mr. Santosh Chitkesi, you asked me the 1 week fever, kindly investigate. Fever of any duration, say a child who's come to you of say of fever of 7 days, means that it is not viral. It may be viral. There are very rare cause, maybe infectious mononucleosis could be cause, but mostly if a fever is persistent beyond 4 or 5 days, then we should presume that we are dealing with non-viral causes. And we have to investigate in that way, depending upon our clinical finding. It could be anything from typhoid to malaria to, I mean, any parasitic infection. So you need to investigate in that because most of the viral fever usually are self-limiting and they usually resolve by day 3, day 4. But persistence of fever beyond 4 days or worsening of the clinical conditions demands the investigations. Investigations should be tailored to the need of the patient based upon the clinical findings. Repeat CBC, yes. As you know, in cases of pneumonia, we get a very high level of the leukocytosis. So polymorph leukocytosis is a feature of the pneumococcal pneumonia. Usually, once the patient has been given the right appropriate antibiotic, the right doses, the patient responds clinically. And also there is a hematological response also. That means the WBC count starts going down, and in course of time it becomes normal. Once the child is normal, it may take some there may be some difference, but definitely the hematological response is almost proportionate to the clinical response. Clinically, the patient will respond. Radiological survey will go a longer time for resolution, but clinically and hematologically, definitely the patient will respond very well. Muhammad Imam, Neti-Lysine, or you are talking about whether this gram-negative bacteria, aminoglycoside can be used in neonates without any hesitation. Of course, you cannot give this aminoglycoside empirically. If you are suspecting septicemia, suppose in neonatal septicemia, okay, then you can give the. Of course, you start the antibiotics, including those antibiotics which covers against the gram-negative bacteria, and then you accordingly change the antibiotics. The amikacin is a drug of choice, of course, and it should be given because most of the neonatal infections are usually with the gram-negative infection. So we need to give the coverage of gram-positive and gram-negative both empirically in a suspected cases of sepsis, neonatal sepsis, and then you can change the antibiotic depending upon the culture and sensitivity report. These antibiotics, amikacin or netimicin, is can be, of course, given, but not in those. Of course, in those situations when it is required, like in neonatal sepsis. What if someone gets anaphylactic shock on opiate? Mr. Puneet Goenka, say. I would now I'll tell you. If the patient has, suppose, patient who is on the parenteral therapy with any intravenous drug and has not developed any complications, do you think after 3 or 4 days, the same child will develop the anaphylactic shock while going at home? Because the patient has gone to the outpatient parenteral therapy. So there could be side effects, delayed side effects, but we simply rule out the anaphylactic shock because you are already giving this antibiotic for a few days, and an anaphylactic shock usually develops once the child becomes sensitized to any molecule and you give the second dose, then the anaphylactic shock occurs. But in this child, any child who is hospitalized for a few days, being given some antibiotic, even the ampicillin or ceftriaxone or piperacillin, and has not developed any complication or any anaphylactic shock, there is no reason why you should have anaphylactic shock in the home. And of course, if any child who gets the anaphylactic shock in the hospital, he should be managed accordingly. I don't want to describe how to manage the anaphylactic shock with adrenaline, oxygen, and hydration and everything, or vasopressors. So This is the standard line of the standard protocol for the management of the anaphylactic shock, even in the home, even in the hospital, not in the home. I'm very happy that I've been getting the questions and very interesting questions. I'm thankful to all of you that you listen to me very carefully, and I will be very happy that if some message goes to my fellow colleagues regarding the utility of antibiotics and limitations of the use of antibiotics.
Second question.
Which one?
Puneet Goenka.
Yeah, Puneet, you have raised a very pertinent question: whether can neonates be sent home on OPAT? Is this medical legally acceptable? I think neonates who are always very high risk, and suppose somebody is a child who is suffering from meningitis, and so